Welcome very, very much to Conversations. A pleasure to welcome to the program a young lady that we're going to be talking to. She's very, very interesting in the interest that she has, and her name is Anna Paola White. Okay, and she's just at the very end of a nurse's training, about to become a registered nurse.
That's right.
And she's also very involved, and I want to talk some about that, and then also about the fact that you're, by the badge she's wearing, you can see she's she's involved with the disinvest.
CUNY Divest.
CUNY Divest
From fossil fuels.
For fossil fuels, the global warming issues and everything like that. We're going to talk about
That's
all
right.
that. Nana, welcome so much to
Thank you so much for having me.
My
It's
pleasure.
Great to be
It
here.
really is. So maybe you could, it's a thing we've just met, and you're friends with Anthony Anthony Granovich, who we did a program with a couple of days ago, and is sitting here, as a matter of fact, in the room. And
Dr. Granovich, yes, he was the elected faculty advisor for CUNY Divest from fossil fuel.
Oh, good. That's right. He's been on the case for a long. Great guy.
Right. It's really great.
And everything, and we've heard that program. But anyway, share with your personal background, born and raised, that kind of thing, and then let's talk about cabbages and kings and other issues.
Okay. So I was born in New Jersey. I was raised in Oklahoma. That's where I spent most of my life. I spent a little time in Illinois in the university, at Knox College, and then I also spent a little time at the University of Kansas, and then I finished my nursing degree just recently at Hunter College here in New York City.
That training at the other schools, that was undergraduate?
Yes. So
How does it work? It's been so long. I went through all that, but I can't remember. You do undergrad, you get a bachelor's degree, right? Is that what we do? A BA or a BS?
So nursing is actually a bachelor's of science.
Okay.
So you have to take the anatomy, they have to take chemistry.
And you were nursing all along? You didn't have a period of prerequisites or something? Or they used to have prerequisites. You had to take so many, Could you share with me a little bit of the college, the way it's set up? I've forgotten. I used to teach at a number of them, but
So nursing is actually really interesting because they have different levels of it now. You can do undergraduate, so they have an associate's that you can do for 2 years, and community college if you'd like, and then transfer in and complete a 4-year bachelor's of science in nursing.
Okay.
And then you can go all the way up to a PhD, and they also have nurse practitioners now.
And you're in nursing from the beginning.
I was actually, I started in chemistry.
Okay, right, so it's science. You're science, chemistry. And you're not doing world history so much as science. That was a division that was a major one that people would go science or the humanities or something. I think they used to make a division. It's been so long, I don't remember.
Well, they have liberal arts colleges that kind of begin, and you get a wide breadth of information.
Yeah.
So. And that's really contributed, I think, to kind of the things I'm interested in now. Okay,
you're interested in a lot of interesting things. Were you always interested in, how did you get to be interested in nursing, as you did, or in the science of that? Or are you interested in the sciences, and did you feel that way when you were a youngster? And what was the family setting like?
Well, I come from a background of healthcare providers, so everything from doctors. My grandmother was a nurse in Kansas. I also was really interested in science from a young age. Bucky Fuller was kind of one of those people that was in and out of the conversation at home.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Really?
Buckminster Fuller.
Did you read much of him or anything?
I do. I actually have a copy of his out-of-print Synergetics at home.
I got both volumes and everything. I don't think there's ever been in the history of mankind one who had it more together than Bucky Fuller, myself. He absolutely is totally inspirational to me. I've did a program with him way the heck back in 1974.
Wow, he's
amazing, great. Man, amazing.
He's phenomenal. He really, if you take a look at some of his history,
that's good.
He really thought that we could, as humanity, come together and make positive changes.
Not only positive changes, he had a lot. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, so he was, from a very young age, he was very inspirational to me.
He had a hard time at young. He couldn't see right when he was first born. He was born in 1895, and he had trouble seeing, and so he was just, and he was always he tried to be an entrepreneur and all that, but he did. But then he had a way about him that made it very difficult for him much of his life to because he wasn't really. He was a great designer and everything, but he wasn't like your normal structured mind. I mean, he had a very interesting take, very synergetic and very poetic mind and reading of science and everything. And he's major inspiration to me. That's interesting. Was your family interested in him, or?
Yeah, that was. I think that was kind of the Bill Nye science guy type of person of my parents' generation. And so growing up with, a little bit of the arts and a little bit of the health background together kind of really influences what I'm working on today. So.
And around the family, you were talking not just about, the latest fad or something. You were talking intellectually interesting in that the family was. And you had sisters, right?
I had 5 sisters. There was a lot going on. My mom was actually...
Intellectually?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, my mother was from Mexico. She had lived in Europe. My father had studied in the U.S., but he also went to medical school in Mexico. And so there were kind of a lot of different influences coming all together.
Was did you have friends coming? Your father's and mother's friends coming and that kind of thing, and activity going? Were dogs barking? And was there anybody who lived as a dueña or anything like that in terms of your situation? Or was it friendly? Was it warm? Was it?
I just had a lot of sisters and neighbors, and and we had family come to visit from all over, really.
I think family setting's important, because, we had I'm older, we had the Encyclopedia Britannica, we're middle class. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica and the Harvard Classics off on the side. And you had books. They used to have things called books. I guess they still do and everything, but it was always a lot of interesting talk going on. I think you can just get into a mindset that's interesting right from early youth, in the setting. I just bring it up. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why education's so important. And really, for me,
I
haven't really wanted to be that much in politics. I'm a little uncomfortable kind of.
Fuller was not politics at all.
Being out in front of people. But health is very important to me. Education's very important to me. And the environment's really important to me.
Yeah, 3 good subjects.
And putting it all together, when I came to New York, I was working, and I wanted to really kind of revamp what I was doing. I wanted to get back. I wanted to finish my education. I hadn't finished my degree yet, so I was looking at affordable options, and at the time, it was really difficult. If you don't have a good job to begin with, it's hard to get to save up enough money to go back to school. And if you don't have a degree already, then you can't get a good job.
And you didn't come from high money. Some people say them that has gets. Them that had, you didn't have endowments and stuff like that in your life. You were middle class or something,
Well, I was very fortunate to get a really great education when I was younger, but then, the economy fell out, and I think my parents had difficulty, just like everybody else in the country, in the middle of my college education.
Isn't it a bother? That we have to be, isn't it a bother we have to be bothered with those mundane things like, say, food and rent and all that? If you understand what I mean, or those practical things.
It's not even a bother, it's just really, it's horrible.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, bother is a light
term
for saying horrible,
Right, and I think just having watched my generation, there were so many young people who were encouraged not even to get health insurance because it was too expensive to do that. So it was kind of like crossing your fingers and hoping you didn't break a leg.
That's really interesting. For me, I was born in 35, so I'm older. I'm 80, odd. So, and I never thought about money. I never did. But then it was a different thing. I don't know how I was able to do that. Mr. Bernie Sanders running for president, he wants college to be free, the public colleges to be, and universities
as it has
free.
Been in the past.
I think that would be a good thing. Yeah, and then also I came out, we had a war, a Second World War we came out of, or at the Korea time, and I had to get drafted into the Army. So I came out of that. That was just a lark. But then and then there was a GI Bill. So there was encouragement all over the place, and you never had to think about money except, well, you'd have enough to get another 6-pack or something once in a while. But you understand what I mean? It wasn't like where you get into great debt as they do now.
Right, and
in
that's
order
actually
to get a degree.
devastating too. I mean, even especially in the medical industry right now.
I'll bet.
You have medical students that have anywhere between $200,000 to $500,000 in student loans, and this just doesn't make any sense.
You spent some time in Illinois. I don't know if you remember Irv Dirksen. He was a famous senator. He used to say, get $1 billion here and $1 billion there. It finally adds up to real money. That was a famous Everett Dirksen from Illinois. Saying, no, but you get those big debts. It's a hell of a burden to come out of school with and everything. And your generation has been confronted with that.
Right, and it's really sad because we see, right now the CUNY Divest group was encouraging the university to take their endowment money out of investments in fossil fuels because instead of
that's what the divest is about.
Right, so the state is divesting from the students and divesting from putting money back into the education system, and instead they're continuing to subsidize things like natural gas. They're continuing to build pipelines next to things like Indian Point.
You're talking about the university now.
The money that we have in our endowment is put in
your endowment,
in investment funds.
Right.
Same with pension funds for the state that are also now being considered for divestment on the statewide level in New York City. So Senator Liz Kruger and then the Assistant Speaker to the Assembly, Felix Ortiz, proposed a divestment of the state pension funds because it's the same thing. When you're taking funds that we have in these investments and we're almost kind of blindly leaving them there and perpetuating this larger global problem that we've all kind of agreed is a huge catastrophic problem. I mean, all of us here in New York have seen Hurricane Sandy. We just went through the warmest February in history. Last July was the warmest July ever in recorded history.
Is that right? Okay. I
and
didn't realize
the science behind it is showing that this is the way we're going, and that we on a global level, the United Nations, all the scientists there, we all agree that this is something we need to act on, but it needs to be done quite a bit faster than what we're doing.
We could talk about that because when did it come up? I think of a guy Hansen, Jim Hansen.
Right. So I think it's James.
He was James Hansen. He was an early. What is that term? They have a test pigeon or something. They put the bird in the thing. He was he was coming up with that idea when it wasn't as it is becoming au courant. It was just really beyond the fringe of most people's even consciousness.
Well, it's funny
early
you should
pioneer
say that.
is the term, I
so
think.
he was one of the early pioneers and kind of beginning to put it very well. Like he documented it so well
and
that
there was
it was
a couple. There's a couple. The Hunter. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I just don't.
Okay.
So he was one of those first people that, first scientists that actually recorded it very, very well, so that it could be proven. But now that,
because I don't remember coming up when I was young at all. Nobody gave any thought to it.
That's funny you should say that because actually around the 1970s as well, ExxonMobil came up with their own independent research. That in ExxonMobil.
Oh, ExxonMobil. Okay.
So I guess back then it wasn't together, but they came up with their own independent research that said the same thing.
About the climate warming.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they just covered it up.
Oh, they came up with that, but they covered it up.
And that's now being revealed to us presently, because they're being sued for basically trying to not tell people that this is what's going on.
Yeah, it seems to really be getting, as they say, legs. The idea. You had a march. I guess you were in it some months ago or a couple years ago.
The People's Climate March.
There were 400,000 people in that march.
400,000 people showed up.
Have I got that number right?
And it wasn't just here in New York City. So 400,000 people
That's
here
the
were
one
here
along
in
Central
New York
Park
City,
West.
right?
Were you in that?
Yes, I was.
Did you make a lot of noise and everything? Did you have a thing that went like this?
We yelled a lot. We brought our posters. I brought the Nursing Student Association of New York State.
Yeah.
And the students from Hunter College and also from CUNY.
Yeah, Naomi Klein, major intellectual, signed on. Who's the other guy?
Naomi Klein, Bill McKibben from 350.org.
Yeah.
We had the United Nations present. There was Al Gore. There were a bunch of different.
Al Gore and Inconvenient Truth. Wasn't that what he was on about?
Yes.
And it was ignored, more or less, by the political class or by the reality people.
I guess
or not ignored, but it wasn't given the attention it deserved.
Media.
It's gathering. it's now accepted science. I mean, there are still people trying to argue it scientifically and everything.
I think it was always accepted science. I think what they did was they tried to understate the seriousness of what is going on.
Okay.
Because I think that...
They being people who are interested in the status quo.
Well, you know, there's money in fossil fuels that we...
Also, it's harder for people to make a change the older and more ensconced, if that's the term you know, and embedded in the old way of doing things. It's hard for them to make a change.
I think that's something that people say, but we're perpetually changing. I think
That's true.
If you take a look at the economy right now, we have been predicting that it was going to make this big change. And there have been reports out, like by the independent, by the United Nations. There have been like financial reports for years and years and years that are saying that basically we know how much fossil fuel we have out there. We know that we can't burn all of it. We know that it's going to cause this human, we have this human impact on the planet that is, we basically can't do this anymore. And financially, other countries have been planning to get kind of out of this. So you have countries like Germany, for example, who have already started putting in the infrastructure for years. I remember going to visit my aunt in Germany when I was younger, and they already had solar panels on their houses. You had zero...
in large numbers? Or your family did, or people in Germany did?
In Germany. I mean, you had like a net zero houses already when I was...
Where are they ahead of the curve on the global scale? Who's ahead of it? Which people? What part? In Europe? Asia?
I think everywhere but here, actually.
Everywhere but here, really?
I think a lot of other places.
Wow, isn't that disgraceful? Yeah.
I've had friends and classmates from other parts, like the Middle East, where they were preparing for this. They reinvested in renewable energy sources, and you have a high school student who was working on research to basically, to be able to like get rid of plastics types of things. Like we have the technology there, and just the United States, we've been kind of pushing back on it. And it's really been kind of sad to see the politics not keeping up with it. People haven't said like this is something we need. They've been kind of de-emphasizing how serious it is. They haven't brought up the health impacts. And we already, the Zika virus is one of those things, the Ebola virus recently, outbreak of cholera. These types of things are going to be, with increasing heat, they're going to be getting incrementally worse. And so our ability to kind of contain them, and we travel a lot, and so these kinds of epidemics kind of get on a bigger scale, and it becomes more difficult to contain them. And that's just one side effect. The other thing is that people don't really consider that, when I was in physics class, we were talking about, how many molecules of air do you breathe in that Newton breathed out, which is basically to say it's finite in this globe. We have an atmosphere, and we're basically burning a lot of things, and we're shifting a lot of the chemical equilibriums in different directions. And
okay, that's interesting. But what was that about Newton?
So it's basically to say that there's limited amounts of chemicals. So you have like oxygen, you have carbon dioxide, and right now we have basically an exponential growth in carbon dioxide, and we have methane in the air.
Carbon dioxide. Did you say? Okay,
And with that in the air, it makes it harder for us to even breathe. We put pollutants in the air. It's just something that human beings can't do.
And it's something that has implications for, because one of the things that really built up the economy in the 20th century was based on fossil fuels, seems to me. The thing that got us out of the trouble coming in the Second World War was a huge growth of the use of fossil fuels to drive all the tanks and the weapons of war. And then the automobile industry and so forth, that was the use of fossil fuels and oil. And all of these things, the economy was the growth in the economy was built upon the use of fossil fuels.
So that's a financial argument, and the reason that's interesting is because it's to say, like, what's going to replace that. And I think as of January, as of February of this year, we've already seen that there's been exponential growth in the renewable energy market. In the renewable energy market.
Well, that's encouraging.
And we know that we can actually replace it. There was a Jacobson report here in New York a couple years ago that basically analyzed, how many jobs are going to be created. And and with renewable energy, they stated basically you could have 6 times more jobs than we can find in the fossil fuel industry.
Boy.
And that includes everything from gas to natural gas to, we have people are kind of including nuclear. Like people are trying not to get, people are trying to say that we need to transition into these things, and what's actually already happening is that we are able to transition to them. There's just a major pushback that's been happening, and I mean we saw it on our city university level. Basically, we took it all the way to the finance committee in 2014, and we said, look, these are
finance committee where?
The
university or?
Yeah, the Board of Trustees of the City University of New York.
Yeah.
It represents 500,000 students. We had
500,000.
Students? Yes. There's 26 different schools. We have a law school, the City University of New York.
That's again what Ed Dirksen would say. That's real numbers.
Right. It's huge. I mean, almost.
It's a huge institution. Yeah, right. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
It's a huge institution. And we went all the way to the Board of Trustees with this information. It was a group of students. We had everything from an economics major. We had environmental majors. We had business majors. We had the nursing students.
These were all students?
These were students.
Yeah, good for y'all. Good.
We also had some help from the Ethical Endowments Coalition. We had support from the Professional Staff Congress, which is
that coming for people like yourselves young doing this, more and more support for those efforts, as opposed to having to fight, to get car fare in the beginning and that kind of stuff, which usually happens with justice movements and things?
I'm sorry, I don't...
But you're getting real support from the society in general, or places within the society that give support to what it is you want to do. You have to get papers out. You have to get office space. You have to do things so you can be really effective. They're getting support for global warming, not only at your college, but across the country. It's growing like crazy. I mean, the support from the society for the global warming idea and the imperative of it is growing. We use this term, maybe you're scientifically involved, what we mean by exponential. It seems to me we use the term maybe too loosely, but it's almost exponential, it seems. You brought it up on a couple of occasions.
It's gaining traction, and because it makes sense. And I think initially when you're looking at CUNY Divest, it's kind of a learning curve to kind of understand what the implications are for having investments in something.
And now are you talking, your parameter of thinking is about the college?
Right.
So are you also thinking about the state and about the nation and the world and all of that? It's included in your purview is what I'm getting at, really.
Right. So this was taking something on a student level that we were able to participate in and advocate for, and really bring light to something that was larger.
Right.
So when I began this a couple years ago, I started in almost knowing nothing about how this would even work, and
how it would work. Or were you familiar with the global warming issues by that time?
Yes.
And you were committed to it? When did you first become aware of it? Can you remember? Seems to me it only happened yesterday.
Global warming?
Yeah.
I remember.
Who were the pioneers that brought that up? I think Hansen was one, but he was not paid much attention to. The people who brought up the issue of global warming 30, 40, 50 years ago. I don't think anybody brought it up. Do you? I don't remember, but I don't remember anybody back when I was young bringing up the issue at all. They said, just get the factory turning it out, because it was the growth of the economy. I'm just trying to catch up.
Well, I was born in the 80s, so I don't know the history that much before then. I know that Hansen was one of the first to really put it down on the books.
Right, and build the evidence for it,
But I think that before that we had, similar type of struggles.
There were struggles, but I mean this global warming issue. I don't remember, like, when I was young, it coming up. I mean, when my... I don't think there are other things that came up, anti-war and all kinds of things that would come up in terms of the critique, and the economic critique always and everything. But it was mostly hell-bent to turn out more goods from those factories in Detroit and build the economy, and, it was all based on fossil fuels.
It depends on what your background is, too.
A lot of it was based on fossil fuels.
Because I think that
and it still is to a large degree. A considerable amount of the economy is dependent or at least equations of business models and so forth, and expansions of plant and equipment, and a lot of quarters depends upon projections of earnings that have to be seen and involved human. We're tied to the past.
So
I mean, humanity is,
I think that's kind of an illusion that they've kind of perpetuated in the media, that we are dependent, are going to be continuing to be dependent. And this is
we have been. No, but let's get it started. We were dependent.
We had this argument come up again and again, and that.
But it's not. No, but if I may, we were dependent on fossil fuel, and fossil fuel helped build the economy tremendously. They made a great contribution to the advancement of the economy. Coal, oil. They were part of the growth of the economy.
And before that, there were, shipbuilding, and there's whale oil.
Right,
and there
right,
was
exactly.
So there's different,
it's history,
But I think that we have to look at it in a larger context, which is,
and advanced in time.
If we continued to burn these fossil fuels, we know for sure that we are going to cause catastrophic climate change.
I think we know that now for a fact.
We do.
Except there's some people want to try and deny it because they got a business model that doesn't fit into their profit marginalization.
And that's where you
or
get
they've
into
got investments in the past that they have to realize, or at least build some alternate way or something. They got important business,
And they're losing it. They are losing it.
Or how do we deal with those kind of things collectively as a human society?
So at the university level, we were trying to get out before we lost all of it. And, unfortunately, we weren't able to convince our Board of Trustees to do that.
Well, you're talking now back to the college effort that you made,
Right, because I think a lot of people wanted to continue saying that this is how the economy is going to continue to go. And there were enough financial reports saying that no, we're going to be switching over to renewable energy. There's no possible way that we can continue this.
Well, I'm glad this thing's going on. It's just sort of been something I wasn't aware of, I mean, I have to admit, I wasn't aware of it or anything. And I know we used to have a thing called slavery, and everybody assumed you had to have slaves in order to get any economic going, and we had to go for, thousands of years, or hundreds of years of slavery as part of a way of having the economy go. And when it came time to do it, they were very upset. We fought a civil war and killed 600,000 people in the Civil War over whether we should have slaves, which we'd had out of history, in order to have some new thing coming. You understand? It's the tide of history that events change, and the situation and the technologies and the things available change, and they have consequences economically to the change.
But again, that's a human issue, and I don't think that what you're recognizing in that is that was a very particular culture's perspective on humanity. I don't think that the entire world saw that as a way to continue necessarily. I don't think it was.
Really? You think?
I think that's a very British imperialistic way to look at.
Okay, well,
an economy.
imperialism, that was the last 1,000 years or so.
Humans functioned before we ever did that horrible thing.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little mixed up.
I'm just saying that you're comparing continuing to use fossil fuels to, enslaving people.
No, I'm comparing it to...
And we are currently, we are going to make this problem worse if we continue to perpetuate this, and people are going to die.
That we know now. It's
We're going to be
clear,
causing harm to people. I think that it's going to be catastrophic if we don't.
But we didn't know it in the 16th century when we went and made a fire. Nobody thought about it. I mean, they didn't think about it in the past, what we have to think about now.
Well, it's a moral question now because we know that it's happening, and if we don't stop it, then it's criminal.
Yeah, but we didn't know it in the past.
But we do now.
Yes, right.
And we have actually known it for several decades.
We're advanced. Yeah, decades, but I'm thinking thousands of years. Or we got investments in the past. And in general, James Joyce, I think I may have said it to you here, I don't know, history is a nightmare from which we're attempting to awaken, of ignorance and of fouling the land in a way, and a terrible, tough struggle in order to survive and to build some progress.
Yeah, but that doesn't have to include fossil fuel.
Well, no.
Because right now, we have solar panels that are so thin now, you can put them on a circular pole. You don't have to have them just on a clunky roof. At the types of technologies that we have nowadays, we don't have to continue to say, all these people over here are going to sit under, 5 foot of water in their house because we can't get it together to put a couple, to say that this is important enough for everybody to be able to move forward together.
Yeah, and we're getting some technology that can actually make that possible.
Definitely.
So that's the thing that people can argue for and say that's what we got to do. And a lot of people are taking up that, and they see it. A lot of people see it as the major crisis confronting humanity. That if we don't get, a couple Celsius up in a couple of decades or something, it's going to be disastrous levels of flooding. Yeah, we know all that now, but it's a thing that's relatively recent in the consciousness of the planet.
Yeah, but it needs to be.
That's all. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
We need to start actually doing something about
what
it.
about that? What is the? And you got an award or something? There was the organization got an award. Let's get that.
So
make sure we get that.
It's a student organization. We got an award from the University Student Senate. So this is.
Please hold it up now. Get a sense of television. Hold it up so the camera. If you can come in tight on that, honey, Josanne. I don't know if you can, but that. Let me read it. I'll read it. University Student Senate in recognition. CUNY Divest. Very good. In recognition and appreciation of your outstanding leadership and service to the CUNY Community 2015 Student Organization of the Year, congratulations to you all.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
It was really a group effort. And I think it was really phenomenal to be a part of such a brilliant group of students who really worked very hard to get
and
the word out.
You were very, very, very much involved in that.
Yeah, so I was, when I was still at Hunter College, I was a delegate at one point to the University Student Senate.
I see, yeah.
And so I helped bring this group kind of in, and we wrote resolutions, more than 14 passed in many different student governing bodies. So the University Student Senate passed 3 resolutions. We passed at Hunter College, Baruch College, Brooklyn, Borough Manhattan Community College, and on and on. We have so many student governments, but also we had the Doctoral Students Council. The Professional Staff Congress also passed a resolution. That's the first union in the country to pass a resolution on divestment from fossil fuels as well. So we have. That's the union for all of the teachers and the staff that are at the City University of New York. So we've really had kind of a huge group come together to say that's something we need to get done. And really it's a matter of getting the Board of Trustees to just go ahead and do it.
Right. Is that happening in other parts of the country as well?
Yes.
Is that good news, right? And that's happening at universities where you got young people, so it's encouraging the young people are picking up the mantle.
Right, so
particularly,
that was kind of one of the...
I think that's a case that the older people are, the more they're committed or have their consciousness built in a condition that's been changed. And some people have a more difficult time changing than others. And the older you are, the more difficult it is to think about qualitative change, it seems to me.
Well,
I'm not sure. There must be studies.
Developmental psychology, the biggest mistake people make about, older folks can't learn languages because there's not neurogenesis or their brain's not able to pick up new things. And the thing that I thought was really interesting about that when I was in developmental psychology was that as you get older, you're more afraid to make mistakes, so you just won't take those steps to do them. And so really it's just a matter of, this isn't the same old thing. We really are going to have to all pick up the mantle and take that and take those steps.
Well, particularly now, I'd agree with you. I think history is a longer running kind of thing. It's just been very slow. There's a term Mount Sisyphus. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but Mount Sisyphus, where they roll the rock up, and every time you get near the top, it rolls back down again, how hard it is, and how long the grind has been for humanity. I mean, civilization at best is 2,000, I don't know, maybe 10,000 years. We've been making some progress. It came slow. You had to learn how to do this and that, and it came. Now it's coming. I wonder if we overwork the term exponential. I know it has to do with geometric and arithmetic and applies to the information technology for sure. And I think it's going over into the robotics now. Robotics are now coming in more and more to the exponentially.
Well, I think it has to do with the curve. So they're saying instead of just saying, we have a problem that's going like this and the carbon that we're emitting carbon into the atmosphere,
Yeah.
we're actually just burning a lot more. So
And
instead
it's
of
going like that.
it's going up.
It almost gets L-shaped if you can see it in a historical context. I mean,
Right.
it's really something. So it's signaling a major kind of moment of transformation. I agree with that. I think we may be coming to a real qualitative, as opposed to just a quantitative climb up Mount Sisyphus called civilization.
Right. We don't want the rock to roll over
Let's
us.
not. Let's not if we can help it. I wonder if you could mention this. And congratulations on
Thank
the work.
you.
And I think that's coming and it's growing. There's these retrograde attitudes toward. I think that it's being forced upon them more than even if they don't want to. So it affects the stock market and it affects a lot of the things by which their parameters and everything's done by market understanding so much and everything by people in retrograde positions and that they have vested interest to protect. And so that's part of the thing, but
Well,
it's growing.
It's sad that
It's growing and it's just coming necessarily. It's like Fuller would say, as he said, anticipatory design science. You make a thing variable and then people realize, you don't go and fight them. You just make the alternative and then people can come to the alternative because it's good design and it's in keeping with the a priori mysterious design of universal mind.
Well, the sad thing is that, from a financial standpoint, it's not even a shift over. It's just fallen out from underneath the financial markets, right? I mean, right now we're in the middle of the oil prices having plummeted.
I know, yeah. Everybody gets less to have to pay for gas to run their car.
Well, on our investment level, one of the main arguments that they had about not divesting from fossil fuels from a moral standpoint, even though that isn't a solid, like, blaring in your face argument,
right.
It was that there's scholarships and they want to be financially responsible and it's not something that they wanted to consider right now, and that no one else is doing this type of thing, and then now they're taking a look at it and it has fallen out from underneath them. Basically, this carbon bubble that they had anticipated for years has come to pass, and it's not. Fossil fuels aren't coming back. From a scientific standpoint, we already know that we can't do this on a global level. United Nations, scientists, the world leaders have come together. This is not something that we want to go backwards on, and in fact, we have to actually pick up the speed and take action on it.
Yeah, and we ought to have more and more technologies that allow us to tap into the alternate energy systems at economic rates and so forth as an alternative to going down the fossil line. To the degree we feel committed to that.
We need to take our money out of subsidizing these things that aren't going to work. It's like an old dinosaur.
That's called divest, right?
Right, divest. And then reinvest in sustainable companies.
They've done that too. Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
reinvest in education programs.
Education programs of what?
Like the university where,
Go ahead, yeah.
They retraining people how to, someone has to build this infrastructure. We can create 6 more jobs in renewable energy sectors by having people trained.
6 more than what?
6 more than in the fossil fuel industry. That was according to the Jacobson report. They did an analysis of here in New York.
Okay.
Can we switch over to an all 100% renewables, not including, we don't want to include nuclear, we don't want to include natural gas. Can we do it on wind and water and solar? And when you put all those different sources together and you connect it on a grid, they found that you can. And one of the things they found...
That's a projection. That's a business model or a projection of the science, as they understand it, yeah.
Right,
that,
so
that
was an analysis of
done,
what, can it be done?
Yeah.
And the answer was, yes, it can be done.
That report. I suppose Koch brothers and others can come up, or the business model of Washington, D.C. and K Street could come up with models to show it can't be done. At that level of a projection of what can and can't be done. That's what they would be projecting.
So my question is, are they in academics? Are they in the science? Is it like ExxonMobil again, where they're just covering it up and saying, we do have the science here, but we're just not going to show it to people?
Well, it's a larger issue. We have a science there for a qualitative change, but the system that's holding it up is the economic one, because we don't have a way, in their way of thinking. Also, I wanted to bring up Jim Henson, if I could, because you'd be aware of it, I guess. But we have the answers, but it doesn't fit into our economic models of being able to to bring it up. You brought up the idea of jobs and so forth.
Right.
And there's some other ways of seeing things economically, one of which, I don't know if you're familiar, or your coterie, or the people, your youth and everything, of Thomas Piketty. He's a French economist. And in the field of economics, they have Keynes and they have Schumpeter, they have Marx, they have a whole theory of understanding how we're going to form capital, how we're going to put technology out, how we're going to distribute demand, how are things created, the labor theory of value, that labor creates wealth as the resources and all that sort of thing. Then you have capitalism, Adam Smith, and you have all that. You have a whole theorizing about economics and so forth. And Thomas Piketty is the one that all the leaders of the major institutions, which are most retrograde, the more you're invested in the old way, if you have an automobile manufacturing plant, it's harder for you to put out something that bypasses the automobile, or a buggy whip is the standard thing. That you're used to making horseless carriage. You're going to make horseless carriage. It was hard to do that when you had an interest in making carriages that horses could pull, and all that. So.
But that's on like a human perception level of what's possible. Does that make sense? It's not.
I'm trying, yeah.
Right. So these economic models are just like this. These are like numbers that we. Well,
you gave numbers about how it can all be done with just solar, this and all of that. By somebody makes a thing, they make a number. Then other people have numbers that doesn't. So those are projections and business models and all that kind of stuff. And it seems to me there's understanding that the global warming thing is a great threat and everything, but whether it can fit into the political, historically inherited institution, we have all kinds of institutions we're connected to that maybe are outdated in terms of where we're going. You're making a qualitative, it's like leaving the womb of dependency upon things that you don't need anymore, or something like that. So that kind of a thing, it isn't being realized at any level. They don't have economic models that can deal with things the way they're developing in terms, except maybe within a small world of developing one aspect of what's going on to the advantage of the people who are going to make the solar plants or something. It's a business competition.
So independent economic researchers, as of last month, when Senator Liz Krueger brought a panel together to talk about whether or not it would be responsible or it is actually a moral action that we need to take here in New York State to divest the pension funds from all of New York State.
Wait a minute. I see. As a way to encourage them not to invest in fossil fuels.
Right,
with their
divest from fossil fuels.
That's a political lobbying thing. Yeah, right.
Right. So they brought, brought people from both sides of the issue, and they had independent economists say that it's unreasonable to continue to say that we can't do this.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
That it's more expensive to get fossil fuels out of the ground.
Yeah.
It's going to kill people. It's going to ruin lives. Entire small countries are going to be underwater. There's no reason that. We are subsidizing fossil fuels right now. We are.
Well, yeah, they have a lot of the weight of the accumulated capital. They have a lot of power in the old traditional way. Yeah.
And it's changing, and I think that to take these economic models and just continue them out in a linear fashion it's criminal, because it's not allowing this. It's this political verbal argument on why we should do nothing, when the reality is.
It's not necessarily to do nothing. It's just you have alternatives. It may be you're not doing enough, or we're not collectively doing enough to deal with the overall situation. We're looking at it from a political perspective.
Instead of
we're good, they're bad,
action.
And that kind of stuff. That's the history of the world.
And if we're not looking at it from a health perspective, then we're not really taking that into consideration either. I think that there are financial implications for not taking action. We're going to have devastation on our coastlines. We're going to have, we already see these crazy storms in the Midwest. You have flooding. People are going to lose their houses. These types of, I think that, that's not being considered in this financial model, where really it's.
No, it's just an explanation of why they're foot dragging. It's economic.
It's a reason not to do it.
Yeah, they have. Now, it may be, I guess, I don't know, it took some years to get the automobile. You had to build roads. You had to do a lot of stuff in order to get away from having a horse that pulled you around in a carriage.
And I think that people just think that if we don't do anything, that we aren't going to be blamed for it. But I think that
if we don't
do anything, we're not going to be.
Anything what?
If we don't take any action, if we just sit here and kind of, well, maybe we should just wait to see what other people
it's
say.
just a thing. Well, but you don't think the drag of history has anything on why the decisions or the objection from anybody to say we got to protect the interests of the fossil fuel people is not putting a drag on things.
I think there's been a deliberate covering up by companies. ExxonMobil knew. They had the same research. That it had independently come to the same research as Hansen and others. And they said that it didn't exist, that they denied it. We have a climate here in the United States.
I don't think they're doing that now, are they?
I
mean, they would do something like that, but it's not. They would do something like that. It would be just
less than a year ago,
a shell game they would do in order to protect profits. It happens all the time in
the
economic history of the world.
That's the point, is that that's what's continuing to happen here. That. And then you can talk about it on an economic level, and that's no longer the point. The point is, if we don't do something, we're not going to have these economic models. They're not. I mean, you have to have that infrastructure there, and if it all gets destroyed, if we, destroy
you're talking
the
planet. The infrastructure for non-fossil fuel. You're talking about solar energy, fossil. During
Superstorm Sandy, we these banks that we think are kind of in this cloud and kind of outside of this, like climate change. We think it's like completely distinct. We had people going to the warehouses where they're storing the financial information for, the transactions between, the New York markets and the London markets and the Hong Kong markets, and this whole financial system that we think is outside of climate change. We had people bailing like pails of water out of these warehouses so that the computers wouldn't go down. Like this type of institution that people are talking about, and these
who's talking about
that people when the media talks about climate change, and when climate deniers have talked about climate change, they have not put together these connections, which are, if the buildings aren't there, how are you going to have the computers inside? If the people aren't there to work on it because they've all gotten sick, if New York City is flooded, we're going to have, more migrations of people. How are you going to create a stability? I mean, they have recently in the United Nations, when they were talking about climate change and sustainable energy for all, they were talking about water wars. If you don't have clean water to drink, it has to come from somewhere. And so these things are not being connected in a way that makes it real for people. And I think that it's getting harder and harder for people to deny that this is happening.
Oh, I don't think it's denied. Well, yes, in our circle or in circles of thinking, I don't think it's denied.
And we have more earthquakes in Oklahoma, where I grew up now, than any other state. They've just had another incident of poisoning water.
In
and
Flint, you mean?
No, this is in Oklahoma too. They have undrinkable water now. Pennsylvania had years of problems.
Fracking, maybe they do fracking.
From natural gas
fracking is another thing. There's a whole array of things. I understand, and it's growing. It's very encouraging for people who are involved in that ecological way of thinking. Fuller was very much ecologically inclined, and most of the great thinkers were, and everything. And it's very encouraging what's going on in terms of the awareness of the challenge. I mean, nobody denies it anymore, So what it is so what does it mean, or what's the solution, or what's the result? One other thing if I could, we only got a few minutes left. Really interesting. Good luck, and you're really doing good work, and I'm glad the youth is picking up on that, and that movement is really going. I think that's really good, putting pressure on the laggards, as it were, in a sense. Hansen, I got a thing with him, and he seems to be, and I'm also of mind thinking about it. He seems to be very favorably disposed toward nuclear energy. I think I am too. And he said that there's so much energy stored up in the weapons that are able to destroy the Homo sapiens species now, which have tremendously clean capability of providing electricity, that we ought to be thinking about tapping into the atomic energy capability rather than just relying only on like solar, wind, and those kind of things that people are trying to do. And he's taking that stand rather strongly. I don't know very many people are. They seem to equate atomic energy with the fossil fuels. But atomic energy is clean energy. It doesn't create any of the pollution.
It's not necessarily clean.
No.
We just had a trillium leak here in New York.
Well, you want to address it then?
And that was,
but let's address it from the standpoint of he's one of the pioneers early, and that's the position he's taking strongly. What position do you take toward him, a pioneer in this issue who's been following it? Take that position. You would say he's wrong.
When I was in high school and debate, they used to say that we have enough nuclear weapons to blow the entire world up 14 times over.
That's not correct. I don't think that's correct. We're not going to destroy we're not going to blow up the whole world. We do have an ability to destroy every single human being. That's different than destroying the world. The microbes would go on.
Right, so,
okay,
I mean,
all right. Be accurate.
Right, so life as we know it could be completely destroyed.
Well, there would be no human beings, and there'd be a lot of other destruction. That's the major thing that what climate change might do, is that's not species lethal. That's not going to be species. There'll be some people. No, but it wouldn't be. What it would be is be socially disruptive. That would do something that might get this political thing going. That would lead to the irrational unleashing of the weapons. That's the real matter. Okay. And Hansen argues that it would be very, very good to get the energy from the Trident submarines to go into creating clean energy, which atomic energy is. And many people say the atomic, and not only that, they'd all be talking about radiation and all those kind of things.
So right
atomic energy is clean.
So we know that in cases like our own Indian Point here, that when we talk about clean energy, we talk about at the point where it's getting to people in their houses. We're not talking about the trillium leak that's been happening. We're not talking about the fact that it's 50 years old and it's old technology. And we're not talking about the fact that we don't need it.
Well, no, we don't. Well, okay, that's an argument.
There have been
You're trying to make a pitch for the solar energy industry that's going to get corporations that are going to make a lot of money.
What I'm trying to say is that we don't have to use these things that we have proven have these sets of risks for human.
What risk?
Public health risk.
Well, let's stick with him, okay, for whatever it's worth.
He's
the pioneer.
He wants
us to use atomic energy as a safe alternative to fossil fuel. That's what he says. You could get all the energy you possibly need from the tritium that's on the hydrogen submarines in the bottom of the ocean. Would be a great thing. Have a hose that goes from that to the energy.
But what is the risk level?
Well, I don't know what it is.
What is the maintenance level?
You got a big interest in making sure it's high, so we can't do that. You got to cut it off so you can build a big thing for the solar energy people to make a bunch of money.
But what are the risks with having...
That's where the argument could be brought up.
What are the risks that are coming with solar, and what are the risks that are coming with wind?
No, not solar.
And the answer is that renewable energy structures are not. The risk is not as high as having to go around the country. I had a friend whose entire job was to go around and assess the people who worked in these nuclear plants. And I know even from a healthcare standpoint, if you are around that type of thing, like why would we have to
3 Mile Island, don't you remember?
That's what I'm saying.
Chernobyl.
The risk.
Oh, it's so dangerous.
For nuclear.
It isn't dangerous. Now, it is not dangerous in anything like the dimensions that have been built.
Well, tell that to Japan.
It isn't even that. That was an unusual thing with the tsunami. There was 1 in a million. It is safe. The point he's making.
But a windmill's not going to have a meltdown like that.
I know.
It's not going to have a risk factor of destroying an entire city with millions of people.
If you want, I want you to address Jim Hansen in his claim.
But that's what I'm saying. He said that nuclear can be used.
You don't agree with what he's saying.
I don't agree.
It's safe. You don't think it's safe, and because it's not safe and it's not economic. I think you may be interested, in the fact that I think the facts will show that his idea is a very, very vital one and takes the pressure off the need to depend only on solar. That's something that would really be something that would be and he's a pioneer in it. And he's arguing that really strong. And for ignorance, they're not taking that into account as something that is maybe a real answer to the energy problem. That's what I'm presenting.
And I think we still have to consider the health risks for that.
Well, the health risk, you're assuming about radiation and that. The assumption within the thing of using atomic energy is that it's safe, and it's not. It's been called unsafe and made unsafe primarily from fear that it's not justified by science. That's what the promise is.
But history has shown us
No, it hasn't shown anything. You've got Chernobyl, nobody died. You got 3 Mile Island, nobody died. You got a bunch of projections. No, that's what he's saying.
But if you had Chernobyl happen here in New York City and
did.
everybody was evacuated, no one would be dead.
Now you're making a scenario that makes it possible we can only build windmills and solar and the anthem. I'm saying he's presenting something pioneer in the issue you have, suggesting something, and there's a lot of science who are saying he's right. We can get all the energy we need from atomic sources, primarily the weapons by which we're going to destroy ourselves because we don't need them anymore because we're building a world which is providing a living standard for everybody. And that's all I'm saying. I think that's something you might take into account. And that they're overselling this thing and lumping him in with solar energy. I mean, with fossil fuel. It's the exact opposite. Well, in his thinking. And let's just look at it and see. I've read a lot of what he's done. He makes a lot of sense to me, and there's a lot of science going that way. They didn't believe in global warming 50 years ago. That didn't mean it wasn't real. And what he's saying very well may be real and ought to be taken into account by everybody. It seems to me that's all.
But I think that we can see that.
Don't tell me about, okay, just a thought.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, because we could get the solar energy going, and it gets a lot of people motivated.
And water
that's really
and
good.
hydro and.
Yeah, right. All that global. Yeah, it's all Bay of Fun Day with tides, and there's all kinds of things we can do with Mother Nature and all of that. And that's really good, and I congratulate you enormously on your group and you on the award
you
got.
much.
That's wonderful and very, very encouraging. You're going to be finishing your research now. Your work to become a nurse, I guess.
Registered nurse. That's right.
How much longer do you have to be able to obtain that?
I just need to take the board certification.
Is this an exam you have to take?
Mm-hmm. It's a very tough one.
What's the percentages on the people who pass the board?
I think it depends on your.
I mean, do they have clear statistics and how people do on that?
It depends, I think, on the schools, and I think it also depends on whether you took the 2-year, whether you did associates or whether you did a bachelor's. I mean, I'm not sure on the exact numbers.
You're not sure, yeah. Well,
yeah.
It'll be it. It'll be duck soup. You'll just sail right through. You're bright as a tack, honey. You're really good. You're
Thank
bright.
you.
You're really good too. I'm really glad. Mr. Granovich has introduced me to you. Are you going to be in the New York City area? Will you be leaving soon?
No, I'll be here.
You will. Let's
Yes.
try to become friends.
Okay, great.
I would like you to meet the new dog we have. We have a dog that walks on his hind feet and is funnier than Charlie Chaplin. So maybe we can get together sometime, you and Tony, okay?
All right.
Our friends. Huh? Thank you for
thank
viewing.
you so
Your
much.
pleasure. Anna, really interesting. We're coming back again tomorrow, so tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. But thank you, darling, very, very much for such a
My
very,
pleasure.
very well-led life.
Thank
and
you.
good luck on the exams.
Thank you so much.
John Kennedy flunked the bar exam twice before he passed, in case that's needed information, but I hope not.
Well, all right.
Flying colors.
Okay,
Right? And
thank
if not,
you.
I know a big guy in Brooklyn that can bring some pressure on that board. You don't want to go that way, though.
No.
Don't go that way.
No, I think I'm all right.
All right,
Hunter was
good.
a great